Before you watch this video, kindly go and see our previous video on mole concept.
Suppose we have a container containing one potassium ion and another container containing one chloride ion, and they are made to react with each other. Then one potassium ion will react with one chloride ion to form one potassium chloride molecule. Now, if 3 potassium ions are made to react with 3 chloride ions, then 3 potassium ions will react with 3 chloride ions, forming 3 molecules of potassium chlorides. Therefore, we can say 1 mole of potassium ions will combine with 1 mole of chloride ions to form 1 mole of potassium chloride molecules. This means that 1 mole of potassium ions will need 1 mole of oppositely charged ions to form 1 mole of potassium chloride. That means 1 equivalent is 1 mole of oppositely charged ions that will bind chemically with potassium ions. So, 1 equivalent is equal to 1 mole potassium, or we can say that 1 mole of potassium ion is 1 equivalent because potassium needs 1 mole of oppositely charged ions. Calcium is a bivalent ion. It will accept 2 oppositely charged ions, for example, negatively charged chloride ions. Therefore, 1 calcium ion is neutralized by 2 chloride ions. Suppose we have 1 mole of calcium ions in a solution. It will need 1 mole of chloride ions to bind with 1 ligand and another 1 mole of chloride ions to bind with the other ligand to form 1 mole of calcium chloride molecule. Therefore, we need 2 moles of oppositely charged ions to bind with 1 mole of calcium ions. That means 1 mole of calcium ions is equal to 2 equivalents, or 1 equivalent is equal to half mole of calcium ions. 1 mole of calcium ions is equal to 2 equivalents, which we know by now. It means 1 mole of calcium will require 2 moles of oppositely charged ions. 2 moles of calcium will be 4 equivalents, which means 1 mole of calcium will require 2 moles of oppositely charged ions. So, another mole of calcium will require 2 moles of oppositely charged ions. So, it is 4 equivalents. 3 moles of calcium will be 6 equivalents because each mole of calcium will require 2 moles of oppositely charged ions. Here, there are 3 moles of calcium. But since each calcium will require 2 moles of oppositely charged ions, hence 3 moles of calcium ions will be 6 equivalents. Here, you will be able to see the equation of calcium chloride in moles and in equivalents. 1 mole of calcium reacts with 2 moles of chloride ions to form 1 mole of calcium chloride, whereas 2 equivalents of calcium will react with 2 equivalent of chloride ions to form 1 equivalent calcium chloride. Since we know 1 mole of calcium is equal to 2 equivalents, so in the molar equation, 1 mole of calcium will be 2 equivalent calcium. We know 1 mole of chloride ion is equal to 1 equivalent. So in the molar equation, 2 moles of chloride will be 2 equivalent. Now in this example, you can very well differentiate between the molar equation and the equivalent equation. Let us take the example of a nitrogen ion. Nitrogen is a trivalent ion. It will accept 3 positively charged ions to neutralize it. In this case, 3 hydrogen ions, which are positively charged ions, have neutralized nitrogen to form 1 ammonia. Therefore, 1 nitrogen will react with 3 hydrogen ions to form 1 molecule of ammonia molecule. That means 1 mole of nitrogen will require 3 moles of hydrogen to form 1 mole of ammonia. Therefore, we can say that 1 mole of nitrogen is equal to 3 equivalents, or 1 equivalent is equal to 1/3 mole of nitrogen. Now, can you say 3 moles of nitrogen is equal to how many equivalents? It means we have 3 moles of nitrogen ions, but each mole of nitrogen ion will require 3 moles of oppositely charged ions. Therefore, 3 moles of nitrogen ion will require 9 moles of oppositely charged ions to form 3 moles of ammonia. That means 3 moles of nitrogen is equal to 9 equivalents. Let us see the relationship between mole and millimole. 1 mole is equal to 1000 millimole, or in other words, 1 millimole is equal to 1000 of a mole. Similarly, 1 equivalent is equal to 1000 milliequivalent. Therefore, 1 milliequivalent is equal to 1000 of an equivalent. 1 mole of nitrogen is equal to 3 equivalents. We can also say 1 millimole of nitrogen is equal to 3 milliequivalents. Similarly, 1 equivalent is equal to 1/3 mole of nitrogen ion. Therefore, 1 milliequivalent is equal to 1/3 millimole of nitrogen ion. Remember, when we talk equivalence, that means we are talking about electrolyte in a solution, because equivalent measures the chemical combining activity of an electrolyte in a solution. The chemical combining activity depends on 2 factors. Number 1, total number of ions in a solution. More the ions in a solution means the more chemical combining activity. Lesser the number of ions in a solution, lesser is the chemical combining activity. Number 2, the valence or the charge of the ions. That means more the valency, more is the chemical combining activity. Less the valency, less is the chemical combining activity. Let us see the mathematical equation for an equivalent. Equivalency is equal to total number of ions in a solution multiplied by the valence or the charge of the ions. That means equivalent is equal to moles into valency. Moles speak of the number of ions in a solution. So, if we multiply the amount of moles with the valency of the ion, we get the equivalence. We already know that mole is represented by the equation amount of the substance in grams divided by the molecular weight of the substance in grams. When we say equivalence, we consider moles or number of moles in a solution. When we consider milliequivalent, we consider the number of millimoles that are there in the solution. For moles, we consider the weight and the molecular weight in grams. For milliequivalents, we consider the weight and the molecular weights to be in milligrams. Just keep this in mind. Here, we have a solution containing sodium chloride. And we will be calculating this in millimoles. So we know millimoles is equal to amount of the substance in milligram divided by the molecular weight of the substance in milligram. So what is the total amount? The total amount is 9 grams of sodium chloride is present here. We know the molecular weight of sodium chloride is 58.5 milligrams. So now we use the millimole equation, which is total weight in milligram divided by the molecular weight in milligram. So total weight is 9000 milligram. We have converted 9 grams to 9000 milligram here, divided by the molecular weight 58.5. And the answer is 154 millimoles. So it means 9 grams of sodium chloride is equal to 154 millimoles. Now let us convert the millimoles into milliequivalent. We know milliequivalent is equal to millimoles multiplied by the valence. Here, we know that there are 154 millimoles of sodium chloride. The valence of the salt sodium chloride is 1. Remember, the valence of any salt molecule is always 1 since it is not in ionic state. So the answer is 154 milliequivalent. That means 154 millimoles of sodium chloride is equal to 154 milliequivalent of sodium chloride. One sodium chloride molecule dissociates into one sodium ion and one chloride ion. 154 millimoles of sodium chloride will give 154 millimoles of sodium and 154 millimoles of chloride ion. Now, if we multiply the molar value with the valency of each, we get the equivalent value, that is the milliequivalent value in this case. Therefore, 154 milliequivalent of sodium chloride will split into 154 milliequivalents of sodium and 154 milliequivalents of chloride ions. One molecule of calcium chloride dissociates into one ion of calcium and 2 ions of chloride. Therefore, 1 millimole of calcium chloride will dissociate to form 1 millimole of calcium ions and 2 millimoles of chloride ions. Now, if we multiply the molar values with the valency, then we get to see this. That means 1 milliequivalent of calcium chloride will form 2 milliequivalents of calcium ions and 2 milliequivalents of chloride ions. Now you can see the difference in the molar value of calcium chloride and the equivalent value of calcium chloride.
The difference in the values of moles and equivalents is brought about by the valence, that is, the charge of the ions. Just keep this in your mind. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, share, and do subscribe to my channel. Click the bell icon in order to get updates about further videos that I'm going to post for you.